Of a woman who has asked to be called Divina for this video. She is one of the people who filed complaints with the American Psychiatric Association's ethics department because of the harm she suffered from being diagnosed with labels from their manual, known as the DSM. All of the complaints were summarily dismissed without consideration of their merits. Quote, I'm a 40-year-old woman who was diagnosed with schizophrenia and then bipolar I disorder when I was 23 years old, from May until October of 1996, and the harm I suffered as a result continued until 2008, when it began to lessen because of my own actions. In 1996, I was a college student recovering from an abusive relationship, and to forget and recover from it, I took a trip out of the country, partied, and exhausted my body. I had been under extreme stress due to occurrences that would have been extremely upsetting to most people, so I couldn't sleep for days. During the next few days, in the beginning of June 1996, still unable to sleep, I experienced a non-ordinary state of consciousness that some people call a spiritual experience. It was powerful, insightful, beautiful, and somewhat scary. Within a week, I was diagnosed with schizophrenia and as a result drugged with neuroleptic drugs against my will. 2 months later, I resumed graduate school, but because I was still on the very toxic drugs, I had seizures, disorientation, inability to sit still, skin rash, tremor, irregular heartbeat, loss of interest in everything, insomnia, loss of energy, feelings of guilt, low self-confidence, weight gain, depression, confusion, poor concentration, and from June to October 1996. In October, because of these symptoms, which I did not know were drug-caused, I sought help from a psychiatrist. He diagnosed me with bipolar I disorder and said he was putting me on lithium because that would help me with bipolar I. He said I matched the top 5 criteria of the bipolar I description from the DSM manual. I now know, having that assigning the DSM diagnosis of bipolar I allows for enormous subjectivity by any therapist deciding whether a patient meets those criteria. The lithium permanently impaired my thyroid function. I refused to take it when I realized it was causing terrible effects, including confusion, poor concentration, which among other things made it impossible for me to concentrate on my graduate studies. I couldn't remember the contents of a single page immediately after I read it. Another psychiatrist then put me on antidepressants. I was very depressed, probably from the shock of the diagnosis and definitely from all the drugs I was on. 2 doctors said I would need medications the rest of my life because I was severely mentally ill with bipolar I disorder. After about 2 years, having had multiple seizures due to the drugs, I was diagnosed with epilepsy and had my driver's license taken away. I was given more drugs, mood stabilizers, neuroleptics, for bipolar I, which they said would be with me for life, and anti-epileptic medication for seizures. I now supposedly had a psychiatric disorder and a neurological one. And according to these highly educated, famous doctors, there was no cure. These words would not have been spoken if the DSM editors had said their manual is unscientific and that its labels should not be applied when there are obvious reasons for the behavior or feelings that trouble the patient, but not be considered mental illnesses. After several voluntary hospitalizations due to drug effects, including, but not limited to being suicidal, having multiple seizures, disorientation, depression, confusion, poor concentration, etc., being a lab rat for several medications, and agonizing self-doubt from 1996 to 2008, in April of 2008, I went off medications completely by myself. It was the best decision of my life. Today, 2012, I live a medication-free life. I do not believe in any of my diagnoses. I feel like I went through a Holocaust. Some people believe doctors 100%, even more than their own judgment or intuition, most likely because of the impression that the DSM and the drug treatments represent some scientific truth and proven effectiveness. But, fact, no scientific evidence has verified any mental disorder as a physical condition. I was wrong to put my faith in doctors and ignore my instincts. The harm from being diagnosed disrupted more than 15 years of my life, cost my family and me hundreds of thousands of dollars, cost me relationships and jobs due to my inability to work. I came near death many times, and the emotional distress and pain cannot ever be compensated by monetary damages. It destroyed my livelihood and the most productive years of my life. Currently, I have multiple consulting jobs, including helping some of the doctors at the institution that diagnosed me over 15 years ago. I feel they need as much help as possible, as do the people they are still diagnosing daily with DSM disorders. I lead a healthy lifestyle based on rest, nutrition, exercise, and meditation. I had to learn to love myself and stop doubting my intuition, my spirituality, my creativity, and my sensitivity. I started to respect myself, my uniqueness, and my beautiful gifts. I was diagnosed with allegedly psychiatric illnesses without other causes of my difficulties being considered. The DSM listings for the labels given to me do not warn against applying those labels if the person is having the problems that should, by no stretch of the imagination, be considered mental illnesses rather than understandable reactions to identifiable problems. Had I not fought it, I might today believe those diagnoses to be accurate and alarming. I might still be taking those unnecessary and risky drugs. Some of the most compelling evidence that I did not have a mental disorder, mental illness, is that now I do nothing that would be recommended for someone who is mentally ill, and I function so well in so many arenas of my life. I suffered many kinds of harm because the DSM diagnoses carry the weight of supposedly being scientifically grounded. And economic losses I incurred include cost to my family and me of hundreds of thousands of dollars, lost jobs because the drugs made me unable to work, the most productive years of my life. Non-economic losses I incurred include more than 15 years of my life disrupted, seizures, disorientation, inability to sit still, skin rash, tremor, irregular heartbeat, loss of interest in everything, insomnia, loss of energy, feelings of guilt, low self-confidence, weight gain, depression, confusion, poor concentration, etc. I came near death many times. Due to the drug effects, I lost many friendships. I was dehumanized and endangered as a lab rat for several medications. I suffered devastating self-doubt because of being told I was seriously mentally disordered. Thus, I did not want to live and was suicidal. I lived in fear because it is widely accepted that people with the kinds of labels that were given to me do not get better. I felt extreme guilt and lost my self-esteem, making it impossible for me to survive in a world where self-confidence is needed to excel. The diagnoses remain on my chart and thus will continue to follow me.